Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome to the Brookfield India Real Estate Trust earnings call for financial year March 31st, 2021. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode until the floor is open for questions. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star then 0 on your touchtone phone. Please note that this call is being recorded. On the call we have the following persons: Mr. Ankur Gupta, Managing Partner, Head of India Real Estate, Brookfield Asset Management, and Director at Brookprop Management Services Private Limited. Mr. Alok Agarwal, Chief Executive Officer, Brookprop Management Services Private Limited. Mr. Sanjeev Kumar Sharma, Chief Financial Officer, Brookprop Management Services Private Limited. Ms. Ruhi Goswami, Compliance Officer. We also have Mr. Rohan Ghosh, Mr. Rachit Kothari, and Mr. Sarthak Patel from Brookfield. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Rachit Kothari. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to the first earnings call of Brookfield India Real Estate Trust. We finished financial year 2021 with strong operating results on the back of a solid balance sheet with very low leverage. Further, we have good visibility to distribute to our unit holders rupees 12.75 a unit in NDCF over the next couple of quarters. With the second wave of COVID-19, some momentum has been lost in decision-making for new space take-up. At the same time, the supply dynamics have turned highly favorable in our gateway micro-markets, with the new supply adding up to only 5 million square feet over the next 3 years, which represents just 6% of the pan-India share. On the balance, we are hopeful that the government's thrust on vaccination shall help us return to normalcy sooner. The sector that we house in our properties, that is the technology services industry, continues its secular growth with a robust outlook. The business on the books is increasing, and so is India's leadership in this space. Digital transformation is accelerating across the globe and has resulted in increased hiring for a large portion of our tenants. Our occupiers continue to see value in retaining their spaces, and we remain confident that our properties will be a direct beneficiary of the post-pandemic economic recovery. I would now like to request Alok to provide the business update.
Thank you, Rachit. A very good afternoon to everyone. Financial year 21 has been an unprecedented year. It tested businesses and business fundamentals, and ours has been no different. I am very pleased to announce that we were able to perform remarkably well during the year and emerge stronger, a testament to our deep-rooted relationship with our occupiers and the value proposition that our institutional quality properties bring to the table. The portfolio has remained highly stable and demonstrated operating resilience throughout the last year. To highlight a few, we ended the year with 91% same-store occupancy, with 93% of our value in completed assets. Our rental collections exceeded 99%, including 9% escalation on 3.7 million square feet of leased area. We leased and renewed almost 7 lakh square feet of area, achieving 17% re-leasing spreads. We also retained 1.7 million square feet of area, which had their interim break options during the last year, taking our overall tenant retention rate to almost 80%. Despite the labor shortages, we advanced our ongoing development in CapEx, delivering 4.8 lakh square feet of new area in N1 and spending almost 40 crores on various asset upgrades across campuses. In our growth pipeline assets, we delivered more than 1.5 million square feet of new area within time and budgets. And with recent completions, leasing inquiry has also picked up with about 1 lakh square feet already leased, and another 400,000 square feet is in advanced stage of discussion. From a business continuity perspective, we ensured that our properties stayed 100% operational during the lockdown while elevating our health and safety standards. A testament of that is the reputed safeguard certifications being awarded to us by Bureau Veritas for all our properties. We also stay highly committed to fighting COVID-19 and augment the efforts put in by the government as of May 20. Brookfield Properties has initiated COVID-19 vaccination drive across its office campuses. This is for our employees, service providers, and our tenants, and we hope to work alongside the government bodies to fast-track the vaccine rollout. In Q1 21, we had seen many tenants come back to offices and space take-up decisions being initiated, which gave us good insight into tenants' outlook, and office leasing did gain its momentum back. However, this second wave, which was sudden and unexpected in its intensity, the movement has been pushed back by at least 4 to 6 months. As a result, we are also estimating that certain occupiers will lease space during the interim break options, possibly increasing our FY22 expiries by 400,000 square feet, which is 40 to 50% renewal compared to 75% plus we saw in 21, but still manageable and low absolute numbers. While short-term uncertainties continue, we stay confident that the demand for quality offering is intact. To draw a parallel, the offices in USA and rest of Asia have already started recording increase in attendances, where a large part of population has been vaccinated and COVID-affected numbers have reduced. The increase in vaccination supply and imports will only help us to reach that milestone faster. With the technology service industry reporting increased revenues and headcounts and highly limited supply in our markets, our fundamentals stay intact. Combining this with our stability, high quality real estate, and strong growth profile, we firmly believe that our business will be at the forefront of the post-pandemic recovery. Now I would like to invite our CFO, Sanjeev, to provide financial updates. Thank you.
Thanks, Alok, and good afternoon, everyone. Despite the current uncertainties, we continue to demonstrate a resilient financial performance and remain focused on achieving our projected financial targets. Brookfield India REIT got registered on 17 July 2020 and acquired the SPVs on 8th of February 2021. Therefore, the financial consolidation has been done effective 8th February 2021. Consequently, our current reported consolidated financials reflect the performance during the stub period post-IPO. During financial year 2021, we collected more than 99% of our lease rentals, with less than 1% being delayed or waived, primarily coming from the footfall-dependent amenity areas in our parks. Our operating lease rentals have gone up to rupees 6.1 billion vis-a-vis rupees 5.9 billion in FY 2020, which is driven by contractual escalations, where we have achieved an average of 9% rent increases on almost 40% of our total leased area. However, as the utilization of our parks reduced during the COVID-19 outbreak, our maintenance cost and as a result maintenance margins witnessed a proportionate reduction. As a result, our comparable NOI stayed constant at rupees 6.5 billion year on year. As per our distribution policy, we would be making our first distribution post completion of 1 full quarter after the listing, that is along with declarations of results for the quarter ending on June 30, 2021. We are not providing annual guidance, but providing a 6-month view on distributions, which we expect to be rupees 12.75 per unit over next 2 quarters. We have also taken steps to increase tax efficiency of our distributions and make the business attractive to a wider set of investors. Effective 1st April 2021, we have converted 1,010 crore rupees of CCDs held by the REIT into equity shares, and as a result, we will be able to double the tax-free portion of distributions to more than 30% of total distributions. We expect this trend to continue. During the last 6 months, our net asset value has increased by 2% and now stands at rupees 317 per unit based on an approximate rupees 11,500 crores gross asset value. Our balance sheet stays strong and well capitalized to tide through any unknown challenges that these times may throw at us. Our gross debt stands at rupees 2100 crores, which is only 18% loan to value, and we believe there is a 50 to 70 basis points headroom in our borrowing cost established by recent market transactions, which we continue to evaluate to further enhance the distribution to our unit holders. With that, I would hand over the discussion to Ankur Gupta. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Greetings to everybody. Over the past fiscal, our India business has made giant strides and has emerged as the largest operating platform in India with more than 45 million square feet of real estate office space. When we structured the REIT last year, we ensured that the REIT is structured with more than 93% operating area, which was rent generating. We also deliberately put in a capital structure with minimal leverage. And I must say that that strategy is playing out very well. At the same time, we have positioned the REIT for outsized growth, both inorganic as well as organic. Organic growth is accentuated when we talk about our average releasing spreads of more than 17% achieved over the last fiscal, despite the challenging COVID situation. Our inorganic pipeline of 15 million square feet has shown giant progress towards achieving development closure for the identified assets and leasing progress across the board. With the recent addition of footprint in South India, an in-house flex service operator that we have added to our repertoire in Brookfield, and access to capital, our USP for the Indian commercial business remains very strong. Institutional ownership of this REIT and Brookfield's management of such vehicles globally over the past several decades puts us in a very advantageous position, because we have seen these operating challenges and have the knowledge, institutional knowledge, for effective REIT management during challenging operating times like what India is facing right now. As Alok mentioned, Brookfield has been at the forefront of managing our communities, our employees, our tenants, our occupiers, and the larger ecosystem, and we have committed significant capital and operating resources towards fighting the current wave of COVID pandemic. We remain committed to ensuring that these times are behind us very soon. With that, I'll hand it over to Rachit and open up for questions subsequently.
Yeah, thanks, Ankur. I think we can jump into questions. So over to you, Nirav.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and one on their touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and two. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. Participants, you may press star and one to ask a question. The first question is from the line of Adhidev Chattopadhyay from ICICI Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. Then referring to slide 25 of the presentation, which has the lease expiry schedule. So you mentioned that there has been an extended expiry of 4 lakh square feet. And you also mentioned that for 22, you expect to renew around 40 to 50% of the space. So just to clarify, is this for 1.1 and 1.4, the entire 1.5 of that you have 50%, or it is just for FY22, that number?
Sorry, as if Rachit here, this is only for FY22, so 40 to 50%. It's against the 1.1 million number.
Okay, and this could you just tell us what is the nature of these discussions? Means the point for extension in the discussions have been extended and they carry on paying the rent, or so no one has vacated the space or is going to vacate in FY22? Should we read that?
So Aditya, this is Ankur. Everybody who has a current lease is paying their rent. What Rachit and the guidance that we are shown is that out of the area that expired in FY21, when we renewed 78%, if we have to look forward for this fiscal today, we and given the market conditions, we are projecting that renewable number may be around 50%. It may not be 78%. So it's not something that has happened or it's not something that people have stopped paying rent. Whoever has a lease that is current is paying, and we expect that as leases roll over in this year, at least looking at the market right now, we may not achieve the 78% level that we achieved last year, at least in the short term. So that is the guidance that we provided to everybody.
Okay, fine. That is fairly clear. I'll come back in the queue with more questions. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Puneet from HSBC. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity. My first question is on the 3.7 million square feet area, which saw escalation of 9%. Can you talk about why this escalation was limited to 9% and why not 12 and 15, which I thought was generally the norm?
Yeah, Puneet, hi. So basically, if you look at our assets, in our Mumbai asset, we typically have the contracts where there's an annual escalation with a 5% escalation per year, and in our NCR and the Calcutta, markets, we typically have a 15% escalation every 3 years. So we have basically had this blend of escalations with some in the Mumbai assets and some in the NCR and the Calcutta assets, and the weighted average number of that is a 9%.
And Puneet, just to clarify, this is not mark to market. This is contractual escalations which annualize, whether it's over 3 year or an annual. The annualized escalations are between 4 and 5%. And in that context, this number should be read.
Got it. So basically, Mumbai escalated by 5%, which is why the weighted average came down to 9. What would otherwise have been 12 to 15?
If you look at a straight line of escalations, they should annually be about 5%. The mark to market is what creates, more than your inflationary trends. So I just wanted to make sure that we distinguish between the two.
Got it. Understood. Thank you. Second is you talked about a mark to market spread of 30% still. Like in the prospectus, can you also give some color on what is still the re-leasing spread left?
A very small part of our portfolio has re-leased over the past 1 year. Our occupancies were in the 90% and they remain in the 90%. So the trend towards mark to market has not significantly changed. I would say over a 5-year period, if all the leases get mark to market, which also is unlikely because our weighted average term is almost 7 years. So the trend continues towards the movement towards the mark to market. There will always remain a headroom over the foreseeable future.
Okay, understood. And thirdly, if you can talk a bit about the tax structure change, which is resulting in higher distribution in form of return of capital. If you can explain that a little more in detail.
Sanjeev, do you want to go for it?
Okay, I will take this, Ankush. Puneet, what was there originally that the CCDs were issued by K1 to the REIT at a certain interest rate, which was giving a cash flow upstreaming to the tune of 120 crores in the form of interest. We have converted those CCDs into equity. Now, to the tune of equivalent amount of that 120 crores, that money will go as a repayment of shareholders' loan in the REIT, and in the hands of unit holders, it will become a tax-free return while distribution happens.
Okay.
Earlier, our mix was that if we consider this 120 as an interest, the mix was 15% towards tax-free component and 85% towards interest. And now that mix will change, and it will happen that 30% towards tax-free and 70% towards interest.
Got it. So the 1,000 crore became equity, and that will be returned back to unit holders. But no interest will accrue on it.
Yes, Puneet.
So Puneet, this is in line with our guidance that when we started, call it in February, which was last fiscal, the portion of our distribution was about 85% as in the form of interest and balance in the form of return of equity as well as return of capital as well as dividend. and we gave a guidance that over a period of time, this will move from 15 to a higher number. We've been able to advance that early on. Again, just for completeness, this impacts mostly the retail investors, and we've been very enthused by the participation that we've seen from that side. So it's incrementally beneficial to the retail and HNI investors.
Got it. Understood. My last question is on the audit mention, audit opinion in your financials, which talk about compounding. If you can comment there, this wasn't there in the prospectus, if I remember. There was a mention, but no, compounding wasn't there, I guess.
Yeah, Puneet, what has happened is till the time we filed our OD or FOD, we had not applied for compounding of this event. I would like to highlight here that this event had happened in the era of erstwhile promoters, even before when Brookfield took over these assets. So we took advices from various legal fraternity and then decided to file a compounding application. And we have filed now recently post our IPO the compounding application, and we expect that it will not be a very significant outflow out of this compounding application.
Any rough number that you have in mind?
Puneet, as of now, we can't comment on the number, but it will be I will say insignificant, very small number.
Understood. That's very helpful. Thank you so much. All the best.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Arun Kejriwal from Kejriwal Research. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Wanted to understand for FY22 the amount of space that comes up for renewal. Any color you can throw on likely renewal, non-renewal, releasing opportunity, etc.?
Arun, we took that question last time around, but I'll reiterate that typically we see about 75% to 80% tenants who renew, some tenants who expand, some who leave, and new tenants come in. That's the normal course of business, which we achieved during the last fiscal as well, despite the entire fiscal being under the COVID pandemic for the most part. As we look forward, we have given a guidance that number might be lower in this fiscal, and we've given a guidance of between 40 and 50% compared with 75. Now that absolute number, if you look at the range of that number, is in a few 100,000 square foot. So even that number is not that significant. But yes, we have said in the interest of being conservative and realistic about the time that we are in right now, where a majority of the country is in shutdown, we have lowered our what we have achieved over the past 5 years, which is in the high 70s and 80s, which we said is this number might look like between 40 and 50%. Even then, the absolute number, as Alok said, is fairly minimal.
Okay. A small follow-up on that. What would be the average yield for this property that we are talking now, so I can get a sense of what can be an upside if a release happens?
So two things. One is if the tenants were to vacate, then there are two sides. One is the upside, where we expect that on an average across our portfolio, we have about 30% headroom. On the other side, it might take a few extra quarters to release that space. So on a like-to-like basis, we may achieve between 9 and 10% yield, but it may be staggered by a few quarters, just to help your modeling of that area if it comes for release.
Right. Second question is this CCD, which is converted into equity. Any impact on the balance sheet in the coming quarters as a result of this?
Nothing major. It will be only that as of now it is being in the equity component, will continue to be in the equity.
Okay. So when you are saying that the payout that would be given, the return of equity and dividend would increase from 15 to 30, this is factored into the distribution amount that you have mentioned for the first half of the year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rajiv Malhotra from Skanda Investments. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody. Great results. There was a question on the identified assets, which is G1 and N2, which are proposed means there is plan for acquisition into the trust. And the value at the base value you have declared it is 8,600 crores, if I'm not mistaken. Do we have a flavor on how we are going to finance this? Because the date declared is August 22, right? The agreement date is by August 22. That's like about just a year away. Any thoughts on that?
I'll start off and I'll let my colleagues take it over. So this is an option for the REIT. It's not an obligation. It's a very attractive option that very high quality assets of almost 8,500 crores, slightly more than that at least, is available for the REIT. These two assets have achieved significant progress over the past quarters in terms of development being largely completed. And as I mentioned, we have structured the REIT so as to not put leasing or development risk inside the trust of any significant magnitude, while keeping the growth prospects intact. To fund this acquisition, should this acquisition be considered by the board and further by the shareholders, we will have a mix of debt and equity. Also, we have kept a very low leverage in the current trust at only 18%, so there is headroom to increase the leverage, and we believe the ideal debt levels for a REIT of this quality are around 30%. So on an aggregate basis, there is headroom available to borrow money at very attractive rates. And also, if we were to go ahead with both the identified assets over a period of time, we will come back to the market if required for additional equity raise. But the guiding principle will be less operational risk and value accretive acquisitions, both from a value basis as well as on a earnings accretion basis.
Okay, that's great. Only thing is your answer has crept up another small corollary question. You say that this is an option, but in all your documents, including the current presentation, you have two different kind of assets. One you call a ROFO or option purchase, and one is another thing where almost an agreement or something. I mean, I'm not exactly the word you use there. So what's the difference?
So the identified assets have the option. The ROFO assets are a first. So whenever the current owners decide, they will give a first look to the REIT. There is no option for the REIT to necessarily be able to buy it, which exists in the identified assets, where the REIT has a 100% optionality at its discretion to buy those two high quality office parks.
Right. So, and these identified assets, the base valuation of 8,600 crores, we understand that G1 is almost delivered with 97% occupancy as on date, as per your declaration, and N2 is still under development and with 86%. So this base price of 8,600 crores is N2 what kind of occupancy? Because the valuation will, I'm sure, differ a bit on that basis.
So the valuation will be done when the REIT is ready to transact. So it is as of the date of these numbers. And G1 asset has also achieved almost full development progress now. With the completion of recent buildings, the occupancy is slightly lower than what we had when that building was under construction. Similar trend for N2. As we lease up these two assets, and they are ready for transaction, and the REIT is ready to exercise its options, the valuations will be updated.
Updated. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Manish Agarwal from JM Financial. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon. So just a clarification on the tax portion. So you have PBT law. So interest cost would reduce in the K1 G2 subsidiary going forward, and at the PBT level, you will be making minimal profits or losses, and hence the tax implication going forward for the next 3-4 years would remain same. Is that the correct understanding?
Yeah, tax will remain same because we do have matched assets also there.
Okay, and for the next 3-4 years, you don't have to pay anything additional. and later it will go to normal tax rate.
Yes, if other things remain same, that yes, after 4 or 5 years, there will be a change in the tax, but till then it will remain in the same bracket.
Okay, and interest component reduces and dividend component increases, right?
Dividend plus repayment of shareholder loan to that extent.
Okay. So that is clear. Secondly, on the ongoing pipeline, you have mentioned 515,000 is the ongoing discussion. So this is like 50% of 1.1 million square feet, or this is apart from that 1.1 million square feet which is going to expire?
No, this is the pipeline of the vacant area. So this does not include expected renewals.
Okay, and how close are we in terms of leasing this pipeline or converting this pipeline? And this would be across which asset specifically?
So this is Alok. Yeah. So discussions are pretty advanced stage. And of course, what has happened that some of the discussions have been kind of pushed a little due to second wave, but we are confident that we should be able to close most of them.
Okay, and it is possible in FY22 itself?
Yeah, of course. FY22.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And any specific color on which asset are these related to? Is it pertaining to Gurgaon, Calcutta, anything?
These are large part is in N1. And of course some is in Mumbai. And yeah.
Okay. And lastly, on the CAM revenue, so last year was slightly lower CAM revenue. So you expect this trend to go forward? Going forward, this will be the trend, or it will be slightly higher? There will be a catch-up which will happen this year in FY22?
See, so last year for various reasons CAM revenue was lower, and of course we were expecting that offices will start opening in maybe this quarter, next quarter. But I think that has again been pushed back to about, I would say, 2 quarters. So CAM revenue would be lower again this year until the offices start open up, and that has been deliberately kept low to support our tenants and to kind of as a partnership approach.
Sure. Thank you so much. All the best.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Satinder Singh from SHR Investments Limited. Please go ahead.
Congratulations on a good set of numbers and compliments to the management for the efforts undertaken in the last 3 months to raise visibility of the REIT among the investing community. So I've got a couple of questions around the expiry and then maybe one more question. So around expiries, I just want to understand now this 1.1 million which is expiring in FY22. The expiry schedule is given on slide 38. So it seems about 62% of this comes from a single asset which is G2. So just wanted to understand as to any specific action plans that the management has to address this, because this is 2/3 of the area coming under lease, under renewal.
So this is Alok. So yes, we think some expiries could happen in G2, and of course G2 was a asset which was fairly high in terms of leasing percentage, and we have been in discussion with number of tenants in that micro market, and we are hopeful that as discussion progress, we can probably refill some of the expiries, but that should only happen towards, maybe it can take about a couple of quarters.
I would also like to add that G2 by area is also the largest asset. So the trends are quite proportionate to the area as well that we have under operations today. As the REIT expands, naturally the share of one asset will start to look different.
Okay, thanks. So a question on these, the identified assets, well, probably somebody asked the question earlier also. Just one follow-up on that. Is the REIT also looking at acquiring assets one by one rather than both of them together, given the different level of stabilization that might have been achieved in G2 vis-a-vis N2, like G1, as was mentioned earlier, is 97%, and the build-out is also complete, while N2 is 86% occupancy, and there's some build-out which is still going to take half a year. Okay. So are you also looking at one by one that will also handle the debt headroom issues also, because then you don't have to look at 86 billion in a single shot?
Absolutely, it's a fantastic observation, and that's most likely how this will play out. It will be one by one, okay. Or most likely that's how it will play out.
Okay, and Ankur, any guidance on how accretive will this be to the NAV and to the DPU, because the values are already frozen, okay? So and the rental profile you would already be knowing. So what is the accretion one can look at on NAV and the DPU?
Sorry, if you don't mind repeating the question, because there was some noise, at least at mine, or if somebody else has understood the question, they can answer it.
Right, so Ankur, maybe I'll take that. So I think as far as the NAV and DPU accretion is concerned, look, it's a function of, I would say, what the NO of the property or the NDCF outlook of the property is when we have finished the lease up. As you'll appreciate, there's still some more to go. We are in active conversation on 400,000 square feet of area. After that, there is some more balance. So I think it's a question that probably is best suited for the time when we are closer to the acquisition. But as a philosophy, the REIT will, as Ankur mentioned, will look for NAV accretion and DPU accretion both. Quantification is something that we can only discover later.
Okay, and in one of the other REIT con calls, okay, one of the CEOs had mentioned that Accenture, for example, which incidentally happens to be our largest tenant at 18%. So his experience was that Accenture has kind of put a global embargo on renewing leases which come up for extension. Is that a risk we see over the next 12 to 18 months from this specific tenant? Okay, do we have any renewals coming up because they've seen some losses in Hyderabad, Madhapur area?
So yeah, this is hello. I mean, we are in constant touch with most of our tenants, including the one you're talking about. There's no such there's no such kind of a discussion we have had with them. In fact, the feedback what we have is that they would, in fact, they have floated an RFP to take more space in one of the micro markets, and they're also saying, and this has just happened recently, and they're also saying that probably they would come back to us by end of this year to take more space. So I think we have a very strong relationship. The business is growing. The hiring has been phenomenal, and as soon as the lockdown kind of peters out, we feel large tenants would take more space.
Okay, yeah, great. Thank you. I think great answers. I've got a couple of questions. I'll come back in the queue again. First one, in case there's time. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Karan Khanna from Ambit Capital Private Limited. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the opportunity, and I hope everybody's keeping safe. So my first question is, you've partly answered that question when answering the previous participant as well. But given that top 10 tenants sort of contribute to 75% of your leased area, exits have been minimal in your portfolio, and consequently the same store occupancy has largely been maintained at 91%. While we understand that large tenants sort of have not materially cut down on their office space yet, given and in your interactions with some of your tenants, what are they seeing in terms of expansion, given most of these IT companies have been talking about sustenance of the hybrid working model even post the pandemic?
Maybe I'll summarize the question for everybody's benefit. Given that a lot of our occupiers are large format tenants, how do we see the outlook of these companies in the context of hybrid models? If I'm not accurate, you can correct me.
No, that's the question, Ankur. Yeah.
So I'll start off and I'll let my colleagues take it further. There are two parts to having large tenancies. One is their business becomes mission critical in properties like ours. That helps us when we look at consolidation. Why are companies thinking about hybrid model today? It is because a lot of the areas in the past 14 months, have had various degrees of lockdown, and hybrid model was required for business continuity purpose. At the same time, none of our properties ever had a single day of downtime, because while people were working from home, their offices were still working in terms of all the back end. As we've seen globally, as lockdown decreases, as vaccination picks up, the first trend is towards companies that are growing, for them to get their teams returned to office and grow even further in a more efficient manner. That trend is likely to happen. Having larger footprint with large tenants is an asset, because then you create more stickiness and more affinity for those tenants to grow with us and expand with us or consolidate with us.
Sure. And just to follow up on that, Ankur, given your global experience also, in markets where sort of the entire COVID pandemic has been contained well, how are you seeing the overall leasing momentum picking up with markets having seen good amount of vaccination or very limited number of COVID cases?
We don't have to look further. In Asian countries, we've signed leases, we've renewed tenants, occupancy levels have been very high. In fact, we got a preview in India as well during first quarter of this calendar year, where there was a secular trend towards tenants coming back to offices. And leasing discussions had been initiated, and certain leases had been signed as well. So it's a matter of time, I believe, but we have to do the right things first, which is to ensure the current wave subsides and vaccinations drive picks up.
Sure. And secondly, talking about your expansion plan, when you did talk about your call option asset, that's G1 and N2. One of the other REITs in the conference call mentioned that they will also be looking at distressed sale acquisition opportunities in other markets like Bengaluru and Hyderabad. So in that context, what's Brookfield's strategy going to be? Will you restrict yourselves to your core markets, or will you be looking to expand outside these markets also?
We are present in all gateway markets in the country: Bangalore, Chennai, Mumbai, Delhi NCR, Kolkata, Pune. So as a group, we are already present in all of the markets that we want to be present in, and it's a matter of time that the REIT also expands its footprint. But as I mentioned, growth has to be deliberate and growth has to be accretive, while keeping balance sheet and operating risk minimal, and that is what we bring to the table. And that's a structure which is not being put in place today. In dealing with the time, that structure has been thought through all along as we've planned the REIT, and hopefully that is an asset today with us when the operating environment is challenging.
Sure. Okay, that's it from my end. Thank you and all the best.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Arun Ranganathan, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity. My question was relating to the dividend for the current financial year. How much can a unit holder expect as dividends for the whole year?
So, Arun, we have high visibility of next 6 months, and basis that only we have given a guidance that in next 6 months, coming 2 quarters, we will be distributing 12 rupees 75 paisa per unit.
For 6 months, it is 12.75.
It's from the period of issue till 30th September.
Okay. So it is not for every quarter, it is 12.75. For the whole of 6 months, you are saying 12.75.
Yeah, whole of. It's not per quarter.
Okay. Till the September end, I can expect a dividend of 12.75. That is what you are trying to say.
Yes, Arun. As of now, our expectation is that only, and we have given guidance according to that.
Okay. The other question was that are we planning to add any new assets into the REIT so that the whole income of the REIT can grow in a significant way or in a meaningful way this financial year, so that the dividend income also improves for individual investors like me? Are we actively looking at adding some assets, and can you throw some light on the amount of square feet or the value of the asset which can be added to the REIT and the income which it can bring about in this financial year, additional income. Can you throw some light on that issue?
We have talked about our growth plans earlier in the conversation. We've identified two large assets totaling more than 8,500 crores, and over the next few quarters, we will actively look towards strategic options towards that pipeline, and also are always on the lookout for growth as long as it's accretive. So that's been a stated strategy for us, and we are always working towards ensuring that accretive acquisitions, not just from the identified pipeline, but even others, are always considered. Maybe we can move to the next question, if that's okay. Next participant.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Hitesh Arora from Unifi Capital Private Limited. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted clarification of something that you discussed earlier. So of the the 1.1 million expiries that come in, you say you expect a success rate of say 40-50%, and then you're in discussions with advanced stage discussions on around another, I think, 500k square feet. So assuming a success rate there of, say, hypothetically speaking, of 80%, so we should be looking at, roughly speaking, expiries of only around maybe 150k compared to actual expiry of 1.1 million square feet. Would that be a correct assessment?
Yeah, I'll just clarify. We finished building a building in the last fiscal of about 400,000 square foot. So you should also consider that we have active discussions on leasing up that building, and also there was some existing vacancy in the existing portfolio. My expectation is, if the way you laid it out, if we are able to get 50% of our of this fiscal leasing done, and are able to lease another 500,000 square foot, I would assume that our vacancy levels or our occupancy levels will remain in the high 80s to early 90s. So that would be accurate.
Okay, fair enough. Just one more question on this 12.75. If you could clarify how much is the accretion from a listing until 31st March of this 12.75? How much accretion comes from the listing date to previous financial year end, 31st March 21? A rough number would suffice.
So Hitesh, actually we have not given those numbers, but I can tell you that broadly the performance which is expected in next 6 months, the similar performance has happened in past 1.5 months, and more or less it should be evenly distributed.
Okay, cool, understood. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Kiran Naik from Modi Fincap Private Limited. Please go ahead.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity. So my question is, how of the total office space we have, how much is it we vacant at present?
Yeah. Kiran, so about a 1.3 million stands vacant. So when it's a 10.3 million square feet area, of which one building was recently delivered, we have about 9 million square feet which is leased.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Venkat Samala from Tata Asset Management. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity. So I know this has been answered before, but just wanted to understand a little bit more. So you did mention that of the 1.1 MSF that is due for a renewal in FY22, you expect 40 to 50% renewal rate. So just wanted to, if you could add some more color. So is this based on your discussion with your tenants, or is this a view that you're taking a little more conservatively? And how much more downside could there be to this? I mean, how much of a pessimism have you built into this?
Look, our projections are a result of a number of factors, which is our judgment, our conversations, and not just with tenants, but with the market participants and the environment around us. So I wouldn't be able to say with accurate percentages based on one or the other. But I believe that looking at the current environment where decision making is being postponed, at least in many situations, we expect that decision making will come back with a strong rebound. But unless that's happening, it's good to be conservative.
Right. So just as a follow-up, do you expect, so is there any downside risk to this? I mean, to that 40 to 50% that you have guided for? I mean, as we progress through the year, or do you think that you have already built in a sufficient buffer, you would say?
See, as things stand today, this is our best estimate, considering all things. In terms of, this is our most accurate, if you were to run our own internal analytics, this is the best estimate. Now, whether there's a downside risk or this can surprise us on the upside, I would expect that the vaccination drive picks up in India and decision making is back with a bang. But this is a more, I would say, measured view right now from our house.
Understood. Sure. And one more thing is with respect to your NDCF guidance for H1 of about 12.75 rupees, and there's some spillover since the time you've listed as well to there, right? And you did mention that 1.5 odd months performance is similar to what you've quoted in RHP. And very crudely, for the performance, I mean, those numbers are also similar to what you had put out in the RHP in terms of your annualized performance, right? So just wanted to understand, so if your NDCF is not getting impacted in a meaningful way for H1, do we expect a higher number of expiries to take place in the mid or the second half of FY22? I mean, how should we look at it? Because your NDCF is not getting impacted because of the increased vacancies.
Yeah, so look, if we thought it was prudent for us to give guidance for 6 months, looking at the environment, and we would look to update the guidance as in 3 months' time when we meet again, when there is hopefully a little bit better visibility on some of the conversations that are currently happening.
Right. Okay. So there is any color on when the expiries could happen? I mean, H1 or H2? I mean, just some color on that. And also, what is the nature of the tenants who you think would be potentially vacating?
Yeah. So, Aditya, hello.
Yeah, hello, please.
Yeah. So, expiries could be some could be in H1, some could be in H2. So that's something very, very difficult to say exactly when they're going to happen. And when you talk about tenants, our tenants are widely all in, these are all IT companies in a very broad-based definition. And those, our existing set of tenants, they would be vacated. These are IT companies.
Right. So these are more like...
Can you move to the next question if you don't mind, because I think we are almost on time here.
Hello?
Mr. Vinkar, I'll request you to come back in the question queue.
Okay, sure.
Thank you. Next question is from the line of Samir from Morgan Stanley. Please go ahead.
Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. Most of my questions have been answered, but just a couple of good, quick clarifications. So first is on the projections that were given in the prospectus for 3 years, including fiscal 22. Do they stand or do they not stand?
Samir, I would say for the most part they stand as you look at things in the near term. What could happen is a shifting by quarters, and that is something which we are keeping a close watch on. But by and large, as we discussed in the past with you, we've kept a core portfolio of assets which have less unknowns in the REIT. We don't have non-office income for the most part. We do not have a lot of lease up in our portfolio. We do not have a lot of construction risk in our portfolio. And that is why we are able to project with a certain amount of certainty. And I would expect that even in the case of our inorganic growth pipeline, they are closer today than they were 3 months ago. So I would say in balance, we are trending quite well, but none of us expected a second wave of this nature to have happened. And that has pushed some of the more near-term conversations out. which we'll have to measure over the coming quarters. And as I mentioned earlier, we look to update our guidance in case in case we need to make any adjustments. But this is our best guess today, and which I believe is trending in the right direction.
Okay, Ankur, what I've probably understood is fiscal 22 is a bit of a question mark given the second wave, and 23, 24, hopefully things should fall back in place.
Yeah, even in FY22, I would say what we have near-term visibility for at least half of the year is pretty much on spot. So if this trend continues, we should be in line with our projections.
Oh, that would be excellent. And the second question is on the trajectory of vacancies or rather occupancy. I think you said that we'll be at high 80s or early 90s, but I was thinking if I look at not the same store but the total committed occupancies, and that's at 87%. Given the lease expiries and then the delay in the new leasing, can this first come down occupancy to 82-83%, and then from towards the later part of this year start to climb back up again?
If both the factors that you mentioned play out, which is lower renewals and delay in the buildings take up, which we have completed recently, then mathematically, yes, it can come into the mid-80s. But that's the guidance that we love to update with you in the coming quarters. As Alok mentioned, our leasing inquiry had picked up significantly in the first quarter and early part of this quarter, which of course those conversations have been slower as personnel organizations deal with more important organization level initiatives right now to minimize the impact on their operations of the second wave. We've joined hands with them and are ensuring that happens first up. But again, secular trend towards institutionally managed spaces is for all of us to. We are experiencing that in the first person here. And as Alok mentioned, large tenants still want to favor consolidation initiatives.
Okay, that's great. And one final, if I may, with your permission, and that's it looks like the new deals will get signed over maybe you're not specified, but say maybe 3 to 6 months, and then we give them a fit out period or rent free period, which is typically 3 months, maybe more as well. So it's pretty much 8-9 months is gone, right? So when the cash actually starts showing up for the vacant area, etc., or the expired area, would be say Jan-Feb next year for the bulk of the volumes. Would this be correct understanding?
So in any event, when we had modeled in a lease up, that model considers the free rent period as well as the 3 to 6 months that you mentioned of non-income generating areas. Now, if that gets pushed out, so that period cash flows get pushed out by a similar factor. What does impact this trend on the downside is if your renewal rates go down from call it 80% to lower numbers. But again, on the other side, if you do if you do have lower renewals, you are looking at when tenants come back and a quicker mark to market that happens subsequently. So on a value basis, you may actually be turn out to be better in the coming fiscal. But from a cash flow perspective, there could be short-term disruption in your overall DPU. But again, we are very focused on these trends, and as I mentioned, while this is the way a typical commercial real estate company would function, the fact that we have very little risk of non-office buildings, no income from things like hotels and stuff, and the fact that largely our area is leased up or it's operating in nature, and to add to that fact, our leverage levels are significantly low. It's about 18% to value. So all of the levers are solid for us that we can actually do accretive growth projects even during this time.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Vishal Khandelwal from Bajaj Allianz. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. So my question was also related to that distribution slide. I think you've already answered that. So just to understand it better, you will be utilizing the MAT credit to offset the increased tax outflow, right?
It's not increased cash flows because we have MAT credit. So any difference due to non-payment of interest to the shareholder, the tax cash outflow will not be there. Theoretically, tax will be there to some extent. And to some extent, you are right that it will be utilized from MAT.
All right. So that was my question. Just on another question I have on the LTV ratio which you mentioned. So you calculate that based on gross debt to your gross asset value, or is it net debt to gross asset value?
This is gross debt to gross asset value 18%.
Okay. And then one more thing, you mentioned that on your side, that 4 lakh SFT got extended from FY21 to 22. So this is like these tenants requesting you to give them more time to move, or they are planning to even go for a further extension in FY22 also?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
As in you mentioned like 4 lakh SFT in FY21, these expiries got extended to FY22. So normally in other cases we are seeing cases of early expiries, whereas this seems good that your tenants are asking you more time to move, or they want to stay for a longer period of time.
No, so what we are saying is we are expecting some of the expiries, and when tenants will give us notice, there's typically some notice period is there, and once we get a notice and the tenant not renew the lease, that's what we are saying. And this is estimate of expiries.
Sure. Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Puneet from HSBC Bank. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the follow-up. Just a little clarification here. In FY22, you talk about 1.1 million square feet of vacancies. When I look at the prospectus, it is last it was filed at 0.38 million. So does it mean that the 401,000 square feet from FY21 have now moved to 22? That's also captured in 1.1. That's one. And second, does it capture the 415,000 square feet which you are estimating to expire? Is it there in 1.1 or not yet?
Yes, Puneet. It includes both of them.
It includes both of them. Okay, that's all. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, that will be the last question for today. I will now hand the conference over to Mr. Ankur Gupta for closing comments.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for participating in our call. As I mentioned, we remain committed to helping our communities in which we operate across the board, and I wish everybody safe health, and we look forward to engaging with you soon again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. On behalf of Brookfield India Real Estate Trust, that concludes this call. Thank you for joining us. You may now disconnect your lines.